we are going to do some mini medical interview questions. You can think of the MMIs as interview speed dating. That's how I like to describe it. In the MMI, however, there is no long conversation. There's no casual getting to know you conversation. There are multiple interview stations, each with a different interviewer and each with a different question or ethical scenario. You have 1 minute to read the question outside of the room and maybe even jot down some notes if you want to. And then usually between 5 and 8 minutes to enter the room and answer the question and maybe some follow-up questions as well in front of the interviewer. You really don't have time to chit-chat. It's not that getting to know you type conversation. You just have to jump into trying to answer the question to the best of your ability. And then when your time is up, someone will ring a bell or a buzzer will go off, or someone will just announce that your time is up, and you have a few seconds to finish up the conversation and move on to the next interview station. So as you can see, it's kind of like speed dating. Please do not go into an MMI not having done some practice. Ideally with like a physician mentor, but even if you don't have a physician mentor to work with, practicing with a friend or relative can be helpful just so that you get practice answering these types of questions and you're able to practice just easing your nerves and thinking on your feet. So today we have some practice questions to model for you. Dr. Zulma is going to pretend to be the interviewer, and I am going to pretend to be the nervous or maybe confident medical school applicant.
So here's your first question. You are taking a class in economics and are assigned a group project. Over the course of the semester, one of the group members repeatedly fails to complete their part of the project. What would you do in this situation?
Hi, I'm Marina Capella. Nice to meet you.
Time.
Okay,
that was
Dr.
4
Zulma.
minutes.
All right, Dr. Z, how do you think I did on that one?
It seemed like you were very frustrated, but there wasn't a lot of problem solving. I think that we would look for students who want to solve problems and have a way, a lot of repetitive of the same word over and over and over again. There's hesitation to want to help initially, although at the end you started to come around a little bit like, oh wait, maybe there might be something going on.
Mm-hmm. And the nervousness, of course, the stalling, the the hesitation, that's a part of being nervous. And that in and of itself is not too big of a problem. Stories are powerful. Stories are memorable. Stories are interesting. And so if you can pull a story into your answer, it's a great way to help answer the question. So I would hope that someone who is applying to medical school is at a maturity level where they know how to try to solve their own problems first before they go to the teacher or the professor or the attending or whoever it is. And so my story and my experience and my answer, it didn't really reflect that I knew how to solve or try to solve my own problems first. It was jumping too quickly to, I want the professor to help fix the situation, right? And I could have done a lot more to try to express sympathy, to take the perspective of my fellow student, like, maybe I would have a conversation with them, try to figure out what's going on. Maybe their parent just died. Maybe their dog just died. Maybe they're experiencing a really major health issue. Maybe they're depressed. Who knows? And so really showing that you're capable of compassion and sympathy and that you're not afraid to communicate. Confronting someone about something like that is not easy, but it shows maturity to say that that's what you would try to do, or share an experience where that's what you learned to do. And then just in general, I think my response showed more of a trying to give the right answer instead of flexibility and problem solving.